it's really hard for me to take this seriously. And I don't think any sensible American they should take what's happening very seriously. It should anger them. But the actual charges you can't take seriously. They're feelings masquerading as facts. They're opinions trying to be passed off as crimes. It's garbage dressed up with a legal thesaurus.
Much like all the other conservative elite power players in corporate media, Greg Gutfeld is having a tough time accepting the fact that Donald Trump has been indicted for his alleged role in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election. He's providing cover for Trump, and he's also going further. This is a talking point that I've now seen by multiple people on the right, by essentially saying that this isn't really about the rule of law. This is a political witch hunt, and they're violating a constitutional right of former President Donald Trump by going forward with this indictment. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Greg Gutfeld's about to fill you in on what that talking point is.
Criminalizing thoughts and it's criminalizing speech. You have every right to think an election might be rigged or fixed. I mean, is every institution perfect? What if we criminalize the idea that if you said the justice system was flawed? What if we told you that, you know what? You're saying the justice system is rigged? You're going to jail. But that's been a common refrain. So I think it's amazing to me how hatred for Trump has turned the haters into what they claim to condemn.
So he's claiming that this is a violation of Trump's First Amendment right. He's arguing that the reason why Trump is being prosecuted, the reason why he was indicted in this case, is because he was saying that the election was rigged. He was saying that there was widespread voter fraud, even though there was no evidence of it whatsoever, even though Trump lost dozens of court cases, even with Trump-appointed judges overseeing those cases. But it's not about what Trump said. It's about what Trump did. In fact, if you look at the indictment, if you read the indictment, if Greg Gutfeld even bothered to do so, he would note that on the second page of the indictment, it reads as follows. The defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. It continues to say, again, this is the exact wording in the indictment. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote in states or filing lawsuits challenging ballots and procedures. Indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. In fact, Fox News invited a legal expert on their show specifically to lay this out, and here's what he had to say.
He has a First Amendment right to say the election was stolen. He can say that all over the country. He can say it all over TV. He has a right to file lawsuit after lawsuit claiming that the election was stolen and try to stop the certification. However, where he got in trouble is when they assembled these electors in the various states after Joe Biden had been declared the winner by the secretaries of state or by the governors, had them sign a certification saying we are the duly elected and duly certified electors. That's where he's going to argue there was no good faith basis. That's where he's going to say the fraud took place. If I can make an analogy, right? I could come on your show. I can say I'm Elon Musk's long lost son and I'm entitled to inherit all of his billions and billions of dollars when he dies. I can say that all over the country, even though it's false, even though it's stupid, right? But
it's the First Amendment.
First Amendment, exactly. But if after Elon Musk passes away, I walk into probate court, hand up a document that says, hey, this is Elon Musk's will, and I know it's not his will, and it says I'm his son, and I say I get all his billions of dollars, guess what? Then I've committed fraud, then I've committed forgery, then I've maybe done an attempted grand larceny. And Jack Smith is going to make the argument that that's where they were not acting in good faith.
I guess Greg Gutfeld totally missed that message from a legal analyst who appeared on his own network. But see, look, I want to just take a step back for a second and comment on something a little broader. When you hear Trump supporters at various Trump rallies repeat over and over again that they don't believe Trump did anything wrong, that it's nothing more than a witch hunt, that this is nothing more than a political, attempt to destroy his chances of running for re-election again. just understand where they're getting that messaging from. Understand that they are in this propaganda bubble that consistently provides cover for Donald Trump and his alleged criminality. Okay, that is a huge problem in the country right now. It is what is leading to deep divisions. It is leading to delusions. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like there aren't delusions on the left as well. But when it comes to providing cover for Donald Trump, I will say there's a lot more extreme messaging happening in right-wing media. I mean, to the point where people can literally sit there and watch a riot take place in the nation's capital and convince themselves that the people behind it are either Antifa or they're FBI agents or whatever other conspiracy theory Newsmax, OAN, Fox News throw out there. Now, with that said, I do want to get into what Trump was indicted for, because clearly he wasn't indicted for his speech, he was indicted for his actions. For instance, he was indicted on one count for conspiracy to defraud the United States. And this is of course related to the various methods he and his co-conspirators used to try to overturn the results of the election, like, trying to install fake electors. And by the way, those fake electors signed documents arguing that they were the actual electors who had the right to hand over the states that they represented to Trump, when in reality, those states voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden. But there's more. That was just one of the counts, one of the 4 counts. He also was charged with 2 counts related to efforts to obstruct the vote certification proceedings on January 6th, which Jesse Waters seems to agree that Trump did, because according to him, isn't this what the GOP is supposed to do? Let's watch.
First point, they said the defendant impaired the federal government from functioning. Isn't that literally the Republican Party platform to reduce the ability of the federal government from functioning?
Oh, is it? So guilty, I guess? But Jesse Waters and his doofus commentary aside, let's take a look at what Trump actually did as the, votes were being certified, or at least his vice president was attempting to certify those electoral votes. So reports indicate that Kevin McCarthy literally called Donald Trump as this riot was taking place, urging him to do something about it. Please send out a message, send out a tweet, please calm the situation down. And apparently Trump was unwilling to do so. He went back to the White House, sat his ass down, and enjoyed what he was seeing on television. In fact, it took him 187 minutes to put out a tweet urging people to stop. Something to keep in mind. Now, he's also charged with 1 count of conspiracy to violate civil rights, and that part of the indictment is related to Trump's attempts to reverse election results in swing states, probably swing states like Georgia. Remember, he gave a call to the Secretary of State in Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, and he had a very direct message for him. Let's listen.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is 1 more than we have, because we won the state.
But you didn't win the state. And telling the Secretary of State to find just the right number of votes for you so you can flip Georgia from voting for Biden to voting for Trump, voting for him, is obviously, attempting to overturn the will of the people in Georgia, attempting to essentially go against what the majority of voters in that state wanted, which was not Donald Trump, it was Joe Biden. And look, this is not my attempt to talk about what a wonderful president Joe Biden is, right? Just like most elections, we had 2 pretty awful people to choose from. But the electoral process is what it is. And to undermine that and to attempt to steal the election to remain in power is absolutely wrong. And while it's a sad moment, I think in United States history to see a former president get charged in all these different investigations, and especially in this particular case where he attempted to steal the election, overturn the results of the election, it is important to make sure that people get a clear message here that this kind of behavior is unacceptable and that no one should try to do something like this again. If there are no consequences, that sends a loud message to future presidents who maybe get tempted by wanting to stay in power and don't want to engage in a peaceful transition of power. That's why this is important. Look, I don't care about Trump at all, right? Personally, like he can go away, he can continue giving his ridiculous speeches, whatever. It's not about him, okay? It's about the message it sends to allow a former president to essentially do what Trump did. And it didn't work the first time, but if there are no consequences, who's to say that a sitting president won't try it again in the future? That is the problem here. Now, in a prepared statement, the Trump campaign, told the American people just how upset Trump really is about all of this, which is unsurprising. But of course, his wording here in the statement is beyond the pale. I want to read it to you. He says that the lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the former Soviet Union and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes. President Trump has always followed the law and the Constitution with advice from many highly accomplished attorneys. Yeah, those highly accomplished attorneys that they're referring to in that statement, they're listed as the co-conspirators in the indictment. Now, they're unnamed in the indictment, but their identities have been revealed through some investigative reporting, and we'll get to that a little later in the show. But the idea that holding Donald Trump accountable following his attempts to overturn the election, to essentially go against the will of the American people, to essentially throw away what the American people wanted, to compare that to Nazi Germany is insane to me. In fact, the only person in this entire scenario who salivates over the idea of a dictatorial regime is Donald Trump himself. That is what dictators do. They throw democracy out the window and they just rule over people regardless of what they want. Your voice doesn't matter, your vote doesn't matter. For Donald Trump, the only person who matters, and this is abundantly clear in so many of his actions, is Donald Trump. That's all he cares about. And the fact that you have all of these pathetic wannabe strongmen surrounding him, knowing full well what he did, but still providing cover for him, really makes me question, do these Republican politicians really have a leg to stand on when they sit there and try to pretend as though there's a masculinity crisis in America because of the feminists? Because honestly, what kind of man will provide cover for someone who has no problem taking our Constitution, taking our electoral process and throwing it out the window? I don't want to hear a word about masculinity or strength from another one of these Republican politicians again, period. Now, I want to go to some other people who have provided cover for Donald Trump, and they're women, okay? Got to be fair here. Let's go to the failed Arizona gubernatorial candidate, Kari Lake, who never misses an opportunity to kiss his ass. She says, this is the most egregious case of election interference in the history of our country. This is a battle that a unified Republican, I'm guessing, yeah, unified Republican Party must fight. Otherwise, we will lose this country forever. That is why I am calling on all Republican candidates for president to immediately suspend their campaigns, stop wasting hard-earned donor money, and rally around our nominee, President Donald J. Trump. Yeah. Why don't we just hand this guy the nomination for president and everyone else sit down, make sure that you provide a path for victory where Trump doesn't even have to compete in the Republican primaries. And we need to do this because he tried to overturn the election and is now being held accountable for it, and we're mad. And so let's make his life easier by basically pressuring every other Republican candidate to sit down and drop out. And also, I mean, let's just go back to that graphic, because when she says we will lose this country forever, I just want you to ask yourself, what makes America great? Is it allowing for someone to just rule over us and go against the will of the American people? Or is it the fact that we are a democracy that allows for people to vote for their preferred representatives, whether it's on a local level, state level, or federal level? What makes this country great is that we have a say in who our leadership ends up being. Yes, it is flawed. Yes, there need to be improvements. But the idea that we would lose our country by allowing Donald Trump to essentially serve as dictator of the United States, if we don't allow him to serve as dictator of the United States, is so incredibly ridiculous. But look, I think that this is yet another example of one of the biggest problems in America, where all of us are conditioned to think that the most important person on the planet is us, me, you, whatever. Kari Lake is doing this for Kari Lake. Kari Lake sees this as somehow politically advantageous. She thinks that Trump has a good chance of winning the nomination. She thinks Trump has a good chance of beating Joe Biden. Unfortunately, I hate to admit this, I think there might be some truth to that. And she's hoping that Trump picks her as VP. Kari Lake is looking out for Kari Lake. Kari Lake doesn't give a damn about Donald Trump. All of these Republicans providing cover for Trump, they all hate him. Every single one of them at different times in the past have been caught either on camera or in writing saying horrible things about Donald Trump. But they're afraid of his base. They're afraid of losing their political positions. They're afraid of never getting reelected again if they actually speak their minds and speak the truth. So in other words, they're willing to sell out the American people. They're willing to sell out our democratic process in order to provide cover for Trump because it is advantageous to their political careers. And finally, let's go to Marjorie Greene, who wants us all to believe that this indictment is really an insult to Donald Trump's supporters. This isn't just an indictment against President Trump, but against all his supporters and the fundamental rights of Americans. If an innocent former president can be targeted, then no American is truly safe. President Trump is just standing in the way. Now, I see Marjorie Greene as a little different from the others because she might be dumb enough to actually believe that. Genuinely. I mean, just listen to her talk about anything. So she might be one of the ones who actually believes what she's saying. But you wanna know who doesn't believe what he's saying? House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who after the January 6th Capitol riots gave a floor speech, a loud, aggressive one, something that you don't see from McCarthy too often, where he condemned Donald Trump's role in inciting the riot that took place. He pointed to Trump, made sure that everyone knew that he felt that Trump was responsible, and then soon after that ran over to Mar-a-Lago to kiss his ring and apologize. Now, what did he have to say about this latest indictment? Let's watch that and how former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi reacted to it.
The current Speaker of the House, your successor, Republican Congressman Kevin McCarthy, he responded to the latest indictment by posting on the social media site formerly known as Twitter, quote, House Republicans will continue to uncover the truth about Biden Incorporated and the true two-tiered system of justice, unquote. He went on from there. What's your response to Speaker McCarthy trying to refocus this to Hunter Biden and President Biden?
What I would say is, and to remind the American people, that on the night when it was very clear to the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives and in the United States Senate that there was an incitement instigated by the President of the United States on the Capitol, on the Congress, more importantly, on the Constitution of the United States. They saw the danger that we were in. They saw the lack of response from the president for not sending the National Guard, because we pleaded for him. And Chuck Schumer and I kept pleading with him to also to call off his troops, but to send in the National Guard. They saw that. They saw the danger. They made statements about it that recognized the involvement of President Trump. And then so many of them, majority of them in the House, voted to reject the peaceful transfer of government.
She's right about that. So Kevin McCarthy and all these other Republican, Lindsey Graham is another example in the Senate. I mean, they had absolutely no problem condemning Trump immediately following the riots that took place on January 6th. But then once they realized, oh, Trump's base, they're mad, and I'm scared, they turned around, reversed their commentary, and pretended like Trump did nothing wrong. Listen, I want you guys to understand, if Donald Trump were a Democrat, or let's just say it was Barack Obama who tried to pull the same stunt that Donald Trump did, I would call for the same prosecution, because this isn't partisan for me, and I wish it weren't partisan for others. This is about protecting what we have left of our democratic process. This is about protecting the one area at the moment where Americans have a voice and have some say in the leadership that governs this country. If you don't care about that and you don't value that, then I just suggest that you take a look at what authoritarian regimes look like and what it's like to live under one. Because the idea that one man can reverse the will of the American people and force his way into power is unacceptable to me, and it should be unacceptable to everyone else.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.